And I think each of our speakers has been reminding us that accountability boils down to us. It's us. And all of us are responsible for moving the world forward in a more accountable way. Arthur is going to be the last speaker here, and then we'll have time for questions and discussion. He's going to be talking about the personal and professional accountability and ethical challenge. Arthur?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Microphone. Thank you very much. I really appreciated the previous contributions. I'll try to take things both further and in a full circle, because I've spent about 40 years working in international organizations, in the bureaucracies of the UN and other international organizations. And it seemed important in looking at accountability after Paris to also say, what is the dimension that's almost never mentioned when you talk about, are these processes going to work or not work? Can we carry through them or not? So I really want to talk about, you might say, what is accountability personally and professionally when you're working within one of these structures? The Paris Agreement, as you've already heard, went between states. States are responsible for their implementation. States have institutions of government. These institutions are staffed by civil servants, elected officials, judges, and so on. And so bureaucracies function with bureaucrats. So it's really worth saying, what is the role of individual, personal, and professional accountability when you're working in one of those structures? When you're part of that responsibility to implement what was signed here in Paris or whatever other agreements you're looking at accountability for. And it's a dimension that makes a much bigger difference than one can particularly appreciate. We know, of course, if you're working for a government or an agency, you have staff rules, and they impose obligations. You're supposed to do certain things and not do certain other things. But there's always some leeway within the staff rules for conscientiousness. And so, disregarding those who might intentionally disobey or be obstructionist, and I've actually seen that at an intergovernmental meeting, a representative of a well-known European country got up and said, my government is in favor of this program. I'm personally against it for the following reasons, and convinced them to vote it down. Now, I did learn afterwards, this was his last assignment, he was going back to retire, and he felt for once in his life as a diplomat, he would speak his own mind. So that does happen, even in diplomacy. But even beyond that, you've got the foot-dragging response, or doing the absolute minimum necessary to squeak by, or just doing one's job, or doing what's expected, or actually doing one's best, or perhaps efforts above and beyond the call of duty, or even outstanding initiative and performance. You can see the ethical motivation of the individual can make a big difference as to what that individual is doing as part of one of these processes. So we want to look at effective implementation. We also need to say, how do we build an individual sense of responsibility and accountability within our institutions, within our government departments, or within our UN agencies? And it needs to go beyond the simple fear of disciplinary sanctions. You might get punished if you do something wrong. Because we know that exactly rewards are much more effective than punishment. But punishment, maybe you can find some way around it. But a reward is a much more positive way of encouraging the kind of behavior that is needed. And if you have it that's based on an ethical foundation, then already the individual is driven by their own internal system of conscience. They may feel guilty or have a bad conscience if they've not done something they could have done better, or if they made their best effort and they really feel that they're living a virtuous life, and that in itself can be work. Jeffrey Sachs, who's been involved in producing the World Happiness Reports, in the second edition, he wrote a whole separate article on the happiness that comes from living a virtuous life. And I think too often today, where everything is expediency and everything is just getting along with things, to think about, and this is what it comes out, for instance, look at the Bhutan Gross National Happiness, for instance, where they said, how do you define this in their own context, which is really, it's not happiness in the sense of having the latest Nike shoes or the latest iPhone, but happiness of having social relationships, of having fulfilled your moral obligations. It takes on a whole other dimension that is seldom captured in our materialist society, and yet it's really one of the fundamental drivers of any progress and any accountability we would like to see. So for a public servant, already that's an idea of service. Public servant is there to service. But if you're conscious of the risks from climate change in your job, if you feel ethically responsible to prevent these impacts from happening, if you are supported by hierarchy to implement and even beyond, you're encouraged to even go further than the minimum, and your hierarchy understands and appreciates your efforts, that can make such a difference in the way in which the job is carried out, the institution performs its work. Of course, this is founded on individual values, and we know each person's values, they come first in your family, in childhood, your mother or your family or whatever. If it's not the television set, at least will give you a certain set of values. And then of course you reach pre-adolescence where you break away from the family and adopt your own values, and that's a very critical time in education. But if we want to say change values for more accountability, for more sustainability, then you can either find that often in life somebody is disillusioned. They tried something that didn't work and they sort of will give up, will do like everybody else. Or they felt they've got the realities of the world, they leave behind their idealistic adolescence and go out in the cold, cruel world. You're cold and cruel like everybody else. But you can also have the positive process, the role model, the person who really stands out as somebody who was exceptional. I was lucky when I first joined the United Nations. I worked for a director who was the most phenomenal person. He was a Yugoslav scientist creating the Regional Seas program in UNEP. And he believed in the UN Charter. You were just there, faceless civil servants to be of service to society. And he got Greece and Turkey to work together. He got Israel and Libya to collaborate in the Mediterranean. He did the most amazing things, and he refused to take any credit for everything he did in a long career in the United Nations, because that was not the UN way. And so when you have somebody like as a role model, it can really be inspiring for everything you do after that. You also have the religious conversion. Some people finally find some values they believe in and want to apply, and that also can drive them forward and bring some change in their values, in their lifestyle. But a person who doesn't have those convictions may simply drift through life, expediency, self-interest, where another person who has an ethical or spiritual framework can resist all the pressures and continue to be doing the right thing no matter how difficult the circumstances. Those principles that we're looking at, accountability and sustainability, obviously include things like justice and integrity, honesty, trustworthiness, solidarity, service to the common good, a sense of consideration. We've actually been working on indicators of these things. We had a research program with the European Union to decide how do you measure these things, how can you increase their usage within an institution, within an organization, an NGO or whatever, because that can help to build the foundation for other kinds of changes. And these can be cultivated, they can be encouraged, they can be transmitted, especially by example. So we also need, might say, ethical leadership. And as I say, it can be a role model, somebody who shows moral courage, the fact people who really respect human rights and social justice, or who live the example of a virtuous life, particularly for young people, to see that it's possible, to see that people can in fact do it, and to see that the joy that comes from that is extremely important in this process of building a better foundation. So we can say leadership really needs to be intellectual and moral as well as political or managerial. It's not just, are you a good boss and you get things done. Much more, if we go to this level, we can go much further and provide a much stronger support for everything that your organization or institution is doing. So we really need to say, in the context of implementing the Paris Agreement, how do we build a motivated civil service? Part of this may, of course, having the reputation, attracting the right people into your institution. Do you have a reputation for, for serving higher values? And maybe service to your country in your public civil service, or service to all humankind, the United Nations. There are many people who join the UN because they really want to be of service, they want to be part of that process. And it also helps to have zero tolerance for ethical failings and corruption. Nobody wants to work for something that's seen to be corrupt. Your boss was corrupt and took public money in his pocket. That doesn't encourage you to want to keep working in that kind of an organization. But also you might say, can you also consider values and ethics in the selection process? And you have many who really are driven in that way and say, well, these will be better in our organization to help to carry our mission further than somebody who doesn't seem to see that side as important. And then, of course, you can also encourage and appreciate when you see that. And if you have somebody in your organization who has values, encourage them, give them the freedom to take that thing and carry it forward. So then you get, might say, a kind of internal accountability, which is the foundation of many other levels of accountability. If you have a team with deeply held values, a strong motivation, people really want to serve, that can make up many kinds of institutional weaknesses and structural failings. You can have a very poor structure, but if you have really good people in it, they can make an enormous difference. On the other hand, if you can have the best institutional framework, but if the people in there are those foot draggers, doing the absolute minimum, it's not going to go anywhere at all. So we don't necessarily have to get the perfect institution. We need to try to get the best people we can within it to take forward the mission that may come out of Paris or whatever organization you may be involved in. So that is how I like to take things in a circle. What we've talked about here about ethics and values also can help us to implement what will come out at the highest level in what we're doing here in Paris this week. So now I think we can go on to some discussion.